minus 10 minutes. Minus 9 minutes. Minus 8 minutes. Minus 7 minutes. Minus 6 minutes. minus 5 minutes. Minus for minutes. Minus 3 minutes. Minus 2 minutes. Minus 1 minute. Stand by.
How about that?
We're on, we're live, and the hills are alive with the sound of music. Welcome to the RP Show, everybody. We're going to get right down to business, like Tiesto says, because we got a lot to get to. Believe it or not, the flames are, the viewers are in flames. No, the viewers are writing in asking about Moose and where's Moose. He's coming up in hour 2, okay? It's Wednesday. It's that special day of the week where it's just me. Ta-da! For all of hour 1. We have a lot of things to get to, and it's going to be a lot of fun. But Darren Moose Dupont, the founder of this program, the Rod Pedersen Show, which he's no longer the CEO of, but he'll always be the founder of it. Darren Moose Dupont wants to be on the air in the Vegas hour. Ta-da! He wants to be on, not just on Game Plus TV, but us all the Silver State Sports and Entertainment Network in hour 2 when we go to air across Las Vegas and Nevada. So Moose is coming up, but in hour 2, it's just me and you for hour 1. I hope that's okay. What I can guarantee is we're going to have a lot of fun here, and stick with me. I'm going to say some things that are going to shock you. Not here specifically, but I'm over the next hour, and for sure the next 2 hours. I know that's going to happen, so hang on. So as we get going with the quick 6 show topics here, and the big story, we start with baseball again. As expected, tickets for the upcoming World Series games in Toronto are a hot item. Tickets went on sale Tuesday morning, sold out in about an hour, with resale prices skyrocketing. And I want to hear from you people in the 6, whether it be in the Game Plus control room. Hi, guys. Right in 902-518-3033 on the Western Dodge text line. What are the prices you're hearing? Because I haven't had the interest nor the time to go delve in. I mean, I'm not buying tickets for the World Series, but what are you hearing for games 1 and 2 for ticket prices? Jays will host games 1 and 2 of the Championship Series against the Dodgers, and if necessary, they'll be back there for games 6 and 7. I know the networks are rife with Blue Jays coverage, and what's great about this show is the lady told me at the golf course this summer, Aspen Links Golf Course, she's like, I love your show because it talks about everything. And she goes, I follow everything, so it's perfect. So we're going to cover everything today. But I have not really seen, what's it today, Wednesday? I'm a one day at a time guy. As we get closer to game 1 on Friday, I'll do a little more reading on the series and stuff. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that the Dodgers will be favored as defending World Series champions and the number 1 payroll in baseball. Greg's on. Did you watch it yesterday? The World Series winning catcher with the Florida Marlins, longtime Blue Jays analyst on Sportsnet, basically not giving the Blue Jays any chance at all in this 2025 World Series. He said the only way the Dodgers lose is if they beat themselves, and they probably won't. But that's Zani's thing. That's what he said yesterday, and he knows. But he's also a Dodgers fan, and he grew up, 10 minutes from, I always want to say Rowan's Ravine, but it's not. He grew up 10 minutes from Chavez Ravine, Dodger Stadium. So maybe there's a little bit of a hint of homerism there from Zani, but I doubt it. What I'm enjoying about this series for me is that I can just be a fan. I'm a Blue Jays fan. I'm no analyst. You're not going to see me jumping down John Schneider's back for pulling a pitcher too early or who he's got in the lineup. No, I'm just a fan. It reminds me a little bit of Mike Greenberg on Get Up on ESPN. He's a Jets fan. It clouds your vision a little bit. It is what it is. But I'll stick to hockey and football in terms of not really having a dog in the hunt, and that makes the analysis a lot easier. But we kind of got into this near the end of the show yesterday. Late, it just popped into my mind. I had no time to do any research. But I got more time here today in the warm-up. And what that is what was going on in 1993? And because this is the Canadian hour, and I'm going to get some flags here to wave. This hour 1, Canadian topics, hour 2, U.S. topics. There's a flag shop just down the store, believe it or not. They still have them. I want to know from the viewers, the audience. You can write in on the Western Dodge text line, 902-518-3033. Experience the Western Dodge difference, local, reliable, and driven to find the perfect vehicle for you. Or the YouTube chat, if you're watching on the streaming. What was going on in your world in 1993? I can very easily tell you, and I said this yesterday, so I'm not going to repeat and bore everybody, but I was the voice of the Prince Albert Raiders. I was 20 years old, and we were having big fun watching the Blue Jays romp to their second World Series title. That's what I was doing, living in Prince Albert. And you can't spell party without PA. But across Canada and the USA, and I was on the phone with Moose about this morning. He was only 7 in 1993. Producer Corey said he was 8. So for those of us that were adults, 18 plus, this is what was going on. Brian Mulroney started 1993 as the Prime Minister of Canada. For you young people, that's Ben's dad. And then for whatever reason, he stepped down. I feel like there was a scandal involved. I don't know. I feel like it's when I stopped being a PC party supporter and youth PC member. Let's not go down that road. But Kim Campbell took over. She was the first ever female prime minister in Canadian history, but she didn't last. They had an election. Jean Chrétien took over, and Bob's your uncle. In the States, very similar. George H. Bush was president. Then they had an election, and Bill Clinton came in during 1993. That was going on. As far as pop culture goes, Mrs. Doubtfire was number one at the box office. Number one. Jurassic Park came out in 1993 too, but it never topped Mrs. Doubtfire at number one. The number one song on the Billboard charts was I Will Always Love You by Whitney Houston. However, Whoop, There It Is was released by the group Tag Team. They were unable to usurp number one in the Billboard charts with Whitney Houston there. 2 minutes already? Oh, my God. I'm still on the first topic. But you're just doing your job, Producer Corey. You're just doing your job. I told you we'd have fun, though, here. What was going on in your life in 1993? I feel like Producer Corey was standing in the corner, forced to go stand in the corner at school in grade 3. Right. This hour has 22 minutes, premiered on the CBC. That was the first year of it in 1993. Are they still doing it? I've never watched it, so I wouldn't know. The Sacramento Gold Miners became the very first U.S. franchise in the CFL. And by the way, I got some good scoops on CFL stuff last night, but that's coming up a little later on here in hour one. How about this? An NBA expansion franchise was awarded to Toronto in 1993. They would become the Raptors, capitalizing on the Jurassic Park fame, and they would begin play in 1995. And how about this? It was the only year in history, the Stanley Cup and the World Series were won by a Canadian team. Both of them. I'm just saying. Could history repeat itself? Jays have a chance. They're there. So look, we'll be back. We're just getting rolling. That's the fun. Nobody does this stuff anymore. You know, and I always found it so much fun as a reporter and a broadcaster. I do it. We've got NHL, CFL, NFL, NBA all on the way. We're live on the Game Plus television network, of course. YouTube Live, podcast, and 1700 AM Mission Radio. Hit us up. Western Dodge text line 902-518-3033 and the YouTube chat. What were you doing in 1993? And what are your memories of it? We'll be back right after this here on Game Plus.
Ultimate Fan Zone, taking our show on the road coast to coast. Shop online, ultimatefanzone.ca. Slick, user-friendly. We built this site for the die-hard sports fans. Jerseys, hats, team apparel, offering officially licensed fan gear from the best lines in sports. Nike, New Era, Adidas, Fanatics. Game day ready to your door. Now, just a click away. ultimatefanzone.ca or check us out on Facebook and Instagram. UFZ Downtown Moose Jaw, home of everything authentic.
This is a test pattern. This is what happens when your video company screws up. You don't want your clients to see a screw-up. Hire a company that only does video, so it won't screw up. Then, people who give you money will see less of these and more of you. Skycron.com/live.
Looking for a new ride without the big city pressure? Come to Western Dodge in Moose Jaw, where you'll find an unbeatable lineup of Ram trucks, Jeep SUVs, Dodge Muscle, and Chrysler family rides. With knowledgeable staff, great prices, and that friendly Moose Jaw touch, you'll drive away with confidence. Western Dodge. Big selection, small town service. Visit us today or browse online at westerndodge.ca.
Do you worry about how much someone drinks?
Do you feel angry or depressed most of the time?
Do you feel neglected or unloved?
Do you feel that if the drinker loved you, she or he would stop drinking?
If you answered yes to any of these questions, you are not alone.
Not everyone trapped by alcohol is an alcoholic.
Families and friends are suffering too.
Al-Anon and
Alateen can help. Call 1-866-200-0223 or visit alanon.org/help.
Sports fans, daytime sports talk gets a whole lot better weekdays at noon Eastern with the Rod Pedersen Show. Talking sports daily with A-list guests, and the best part is you can always join the discussion as we're the most interactive talk show on television. Broadcasting from coast to coast from the biggest events like Super Bowl, Stanley Cup Final, Grey Cup, and more. There's nothing like it in the game today. The Rod Pedersen Show, daily at noon Eastern and 10 p.m. Pacific on Game Plus Network.
Famoso, Italian pizzeria and bar. Taste, savor, share. Famoso, the spirit of Italian. Come in, enjoy.
You have a vision, a big idea, but how do you turn ambition into absolute impact? It starts with connection. Booking top-tier speakers and executing seamless events, that's the EMJ difference. We position your brand where it belongs, Guy, through powerful advertising, strategic media, and promotion that drives results. At EMJ Marketing, we don't just promote your rebel, we partner. Your growth, our mission.
Welcome back, everybody. From the studio to your closet. Shop RP Show merchandise, the Rod Pedersen Show store. Go to rodpedersen.com and click on RP Store. Bunny hugs, hoodies, travel mugs, hats, t-shirts. We got it all at rodpedersen.com. Okay, before I jump back into the quick six show topics here, I got to apologize. Well, two things. One, Laverne has written in. He says, hey, RP, regarding Blue Jays ticket costs. He goes, I've heard that resale tickets behind home plate for games 1 and 2 are 5 figures. That's insane. Doesn't surprise me at all. 10,000 and up, that does not shock me. Thank you, Laverne, for answering the bell. I said I was going to say something that shocks you, and that was an overstatement by me. Jim writes in, he's watching in Balgoni. He says, morning, RP Nation. Shock us? I've heard a lot of hot takes from you, Rod. Most of them true, by the way. So it must be huge. I'm intrigued. Enjoy the day, y'all. I shouldn't have said that. I'm just not going to shock you. It'll mildly surprise you. It reminds me, in my role as an addiction and mental health recovery coach, I screw myself over on that too, because I got a very close friend. I'm not going to say his name. He won't be outed. But if I ever say to him, we talk a lot, and I'm like, how's your day? He's like, not so good. I'm like, oh my God, you going to kill yourself? Do I need to call the authority? No, it's just I locked my keys in my car. Oh. Wording is very important. So as far as the shock thing goes, Troy writes in about the Calgary Flames. They've lost 6 in a row. And he says that the Flames are in perfect position, in my opinion. Trade Kadri and Anderson for a haul and draft Gavin McKenna. Finally, tank properly. My quick 6 show topics are going to be all out of order here, because of you people. But with the Flames, I would normally be the guy, try to talk you off the ledge, calm you down. This is what will surprise you. I'm just going to say, hey, panic away. Panic away. I get it. They've lost 6 in a row. And I will remind you that last year at this time, everybody was upset too. They had a bad start. They didn't turn it on until like December. And all of a sudden, I was the guy talking about Ryan Huska as a Coach of the Year potential nominee or finalist, and they missed the playoffs by a smidge. So all I'm saying is Calgary and the Flames Nation, panic away if you want. I know you want to. I'm not going to try and talk you out of it. I want to come back to the NHL in a second. I'm going to do top 5, bottom 5 NHL, but not until hour 2. So you can all hold on for that. I'm going to jump to the CFL. You got me. Just because. I was talking with Moose about this morning, and our business manager, Joe. Our numbers are up, way up, since we made this decision to do Canadian sports in hour 1, U.S. sports in hour 2. Vis-a-vis, we don't talk CFL in hour 2, so people know if you want to talk about the CFL, come here in hour 1. We're going to be talking about it. And even though it's not as much as we used to, it's still way more than everybody else. So the poll question today for EMJ Marketing, as we do every Wednesday, is what is Canada's game of the week in the CFL? And while you feel like it's not that intriguing for the teams we may follow, it's hella intriguing for those that have a dog in the hunt. So the options are Ottawa at Hamilton. Hamilton wins, they clinch first. There's not a lot of drama there. Calgary at Edmonton. The Elcamos have already been eliminated, but Calgary needs to win. Montreal at Winnipeg Saturday. Winnipeg needs to win. If they just need to win. They're already in, but they need to win. And then Saturday night, BC is at Sask. And that's the game. I voted for that as the game of the week. The one that is leading the poll is Montreal at Winnipeg on Saturday. And you people are going to have to tell me why that's leading the poll specifically, because it's BC and Calgary that are tied for second place in the West. They're tied, and they're both playing teams that have nothing to play for. So assuming they'll win because Edmonton and Sask don't care, what does that mean? And that led me to texting Jock Wilson this morning, my good friend from QR Calgary. Sports Talk with Jock. And I just said, hey, I assume that BC has the season series against Calgary. And this is the exact text back from Jock. I hope he doesn't mind. I know he won't. He says, yes, beat the Stampeders. BC beat the Stamps twice. Kicked the crap out of us, actually. I can actually hear Jock's voice saying this. Crazy to think if Calgary and Winnipeg win this weekend and BC loses, the Lions would cross over. And then he says, Nathan Rourke can't beat Winnipeg, Trevor Harris can't beat Calgary, and Calgary can't beat Nathan Rourke. Who's on first? That's what I don't like about this time of year. The permutations and combinations give a guy like me, a simpleton, a headache. But he said if BC loses, the Lions potentially would cross over. Here's the thing, they're not going to lose. BC goes to Sask. Sask has nothing to play for. BC is going to win, and for that reason, I think the Saturday night game at Mosaic Stadium will be the game of the week. I looked at the forecast, 18 Celsius and clear for Saturday night at Mosaic Stadium for a meaningless game for Saskatchewan. Trust me, I get it, why anybody would not want to go. But those are, that's my vote for the game of the week in the Canadian Football League. By the way, as I dip in on the viewership here on this Wednesday, for those that joined us late, we opened the show with the big story, and that is obviously World Series. Game 1, it gets going Friday night. We're going to be talking about it more later this hour in the sports update. But I was asking the viewers, what were you doing in 1993? That's a hell of a lot of fun to have those. At least it is for me. Those were good times. Really good times. Pre-internet. You didn't have people sniping at each other. I was single, ready to mingle, living in PA, voice of the Raiders, Bob's your uncle. Ryan in upstate New York writes in, he says, in October 1993, I was 16, a junior in high school, and worked as a dishwasher at the local Ponderosa restaurant. I could go for some good Ponderosa. BC Eric writes in, he says, I was at the Guns N' Roses Use Your Illusion tour and then watching Peelers at the number 5 Orange. Life at 32 was great. Right? Wayne in BC writes in, he says, I was 42 years old in 1993 and living and working in Regina. You were already over the hill in 1993. How about that? Terry the lawyer writes in and says, same age as you, Wayne, ancient. You're only as old as you feel. John Ohm writes in, he says, 1993, I was working for a hardware store as a graphic designer. I was driving my 1992 Acura Integra and dating a girl in Kenora, acting like a rock star at age 32. And here you are, you still are. That is inspirational. Carlos in Indianapolis writes in, he says, 1993, I was 5 years old and living in Germany. Sprechen die Deutsch? Jason in Red Deer writes, and he says, I was 4 months graduated from high school and trying to survive on my own in the mean streets of Regina. LOL. By the way, before I get back on track here, if we ever really do, I was thinking the other day about the hottest hot wings I've ever had. Not to go all rogue on you and multiple topics, but it's kind of what we do here. Down Under. It was a restaurant in South Albert in the Queen City. Down Under. Who remembers the commercial? Hottest wings I ever had was a restaurant called Down Under's, South Albert, Regina. Just was thinking about that the other day as we go back and talk about 1993 and what was going on. B. John Ohm says a headache for sure on the CFL final standings. That's the thing. You would hope that these last few games were meaningful, and for a lot of regard, they're not. Certainly not for the Saskatchewan Roughriders, but I'll say it again. Assuming BC and Calgary win because they're playing teams that don't care, and BC has the tiebreaker, BC will finish second and host the West semifinal, which, by the way, before I move on, for you CFL diehards, and that's why you're here, who's the biggest threat to the Saskatchewan Roughriders from winning the Grey Cup this year? Who's the biggest threat? It's another thing that I was thinking about. Trust me, I do think about these things. I'll say it's the BC Lions, but not necessarily saying that I'm right. BC Eric writes in, he says, RP getting ready to throw a big grenade. Big CFL rumors coming. Maybe, but not today. The guy's probably watching the show right now that called me last night. He's like, don't spill the beans. They're all going to know it's me. I'm like, okay, don't worry. I'm not going to say anything for a while. You're good. Like, yeah, so don't sit here and think that I'm going to be spilling it today. It's not real huge. Well, it's actually massive. Okay, but it's not something the CFL needs to deal with right now on the cusp of the playoffs. Darren writes in, he's watching in Melfort from the Melfort, where they do the Melfort Shuffle. He says, 1993, I graduated that year. Watched Joe Carter's home run at the parents' house, and then went out to a Johnner Brothers cabaret. Guess they weren't checking age back then. They weren't checking age for anything back then. Not in Saskatchewan. I remember going down to Torquay playing senior hockey. I was 18. I did have fake ID. I guess I had to because the drinking age was 19. Keep thinking it's 21, right? Like it is where I live now. Had my brother's driver's license. Can you believe back then they didn't even have a picture on it? I'm old enough to remember when driver's licenses didn't have a picture on it. It was my brother's. He was 6 years older than me. And they did not. Oh, my God. This is why people like the Wednesdays when I do hour one on my own. They never did ask for my ID that night in the Torquay Motor Inn when I ended up behind the bar making shooters. I was like 17, actually. I was 17 in grade 12 playing senior hockey. We were making a shooter called a snot in a glass. It was green lime, and I can't remember the other. Somebody want to look that up? Snot in a glass. It looked exactly like snot in a glass. Green lime and tequila? It was the next year. Yeah, producer Corey's like, yeah, I think that's it. I really knew my alcohol back in the day. But I was a 16-year-old goalie in... Just 2 minutes. I was a 16-year-old goalie with the Brandon Wheat Kings, and I went to the bar in Brandon. It was very, very brief time, okay? And I was with Barry Dreger. Look it up. Kelly Hitchens. And we go into a bar called Encounters in Brandon. I'm 16. And they asked for my ID. I'm like, here you go. They're like, oh, okay. What's your birthday? Couldn't remember my brother's birthday. And they're like, sign this. See if it matched. couldn't do that either. So I learned these things. Easiest thing, just don't go to the bars. It's the easiest thing. Oh my God. Ken in Mississauga writes in. He says the Sacramento Gold Miners joined the CFL in 1993. Bro, you got to show up on top. We talked about that. In 1993, Sacramento was the first USA team in the CFL. The city of Toronto was granted an expansion franchise. The Toronto Raptors. We went through all that right off the top of the show. BC Eric goes, RP, are you a stand-up goalie or a flopper? I was a stand-up goalie. I was too lazy to get up. It's never changed. Why would I drop down? Then I got to get back up again. No. And the butterflies, too much work. John Ohm says, wow, Rod playing bartender? LOL. Talk about the fox in the hen house. Anyways, NHL next, NFL, and a lot more. We're live on the Game Plus Television Network, YouTube Live, podcast, and 1700 AM Mission Radio.
Country's hottest party is coming. James Barker Band, Bud Light Buckle Up Tour 2025. Live across Canada with special guests Ryan and Rory. November 20th, Temple Garden Center. Tickets on sale now at Temple Garden Center box office or online at zasktix.ca. James Barker Band Live.
Sports fans, daytime sports talk gets a whole lot better weekdays at noon Eastern with the Rod Pedersen Show. Talking sports daily with A-list guests, and the best part is you can always join the discussion as we're the most interactive talk show on television. Broadcasting from coast to coast from the biggest events like Super Bowl, Stanley Cup Final, Grey Cup, and more. There's nothing like it in the game today. The Rod Pedersen Show, daily at noon Eastern and 10 p.m. Pacific on Game Plus Network.
You have a vision, a big idea, but how do you turn ambition into absolute impact? It starts with connection. Booking top-tier speakers and executing seamless events, that's the EMJ difference. We position your brand where it belongs, Guy, through powerful advertising, strategic media, and promotion that drives results. At EMJ Marketing, we don't just promote, we partner. Your growth, our mission.
Ultimate Fan Zone, taking our show on the road coast to coast. Shop online, ultimatefanzone.ca. Slick, user-friendly. We built this site for the die-hard sports fans. Jerseys, hats, team apparel, offering officially licensed fan gear from the best lines in sports. Nike, New Era, Adidas, Fanatics. Game day ready to your door. Now, just a click away. ultimatefanzone.ca, or check us out on Facebook and Instagram. UFZ Downtown Moose Jaw, home of everything authentic.
Hiring a video company shouldn't be complicated. Click, pay, done. Skycron.com/Regina. This is a test pattern. This is what happens when your video company screws up. You don't want your clients to see a screw up. Hire a company that only does video, so it won't screw up. Then, people who give you money will see less of these and more of you. Skycron.com/live.
Sports fans, daytime sports talk gets a whole lot better weekdays at noon Eastern with the Rod Pedersen Show. Talking sports daily with A-list guests, and the best part is you can always join the discussion as we're the most interactive talk show on television. Broadcasting from coast to coast from the biggest events like Super Bowl, Stanley Cup Final, Grey Cup, and more. There's nothing like it in the game today. The Rod Pedersen Show, daily at noon Eastern and 10 p.m. Pacific on Game Plus Network.
RP Show continues. Hour one brought to you in part by Pump Jack's Steakhouse and Saloon. They also bring you our CFL and NFL picks weekly. Pump Jack's Cathedral, Pump Jack's Weyburn. Come early, stay late at the place where friends meet. Every day we do the junior hockey report for the Mad Greek Eatery. Place line, Moose Jaw. Riley Thorpe scored in the fourth round of the shootout. Netminder Matthew Hutchison made 38 saves, and the Moose Jaw Warriors found a way to beat the visiting Red Deer Rebels 5-4 on Tuesday in the Rempel Temple. Lyndon Lakovic had 2 goals for the Warriors. Pavel McKenzie chipped in with 2 assists, and the Warriors improved to 6-5-1. And in Edmonton, Gavin Burker scored the only goal in the shootout as the visiting Spokane Chiefs clipped the Edmonton Oil Kings 3-2. Moose will be with us in hour 2. He wants to be part of the Vegas hour. He's Johnny Vegas now. I thought he was Johnny Toronto. I don't mind doing an hour alone. I could do 2 hours alone. I just think that you would get tired of me. I get tired of me. So we covered the CFL earlier, but I threw the topic out. Who's the biggest threat to the Rough Riders to winning a Grey Cup? Kelly writes in, he's watching in the Queen City, and he says, biggest threat to the Riders is themselves, but oh well, green is the color. Jason in Red Deer writes in and says, it's the Calgary Stampeders. I'm not sure there's a right answer to that today. Was asking what you were doing back in 1993, the last time the Blue Jays made it to the World Series. Kirk in Toronto writes in, he's watching on Game Plus TV. He says, I was 29 years old and an arborist for the city of Toronto. I know what that is. You work with trees. Where I retired after 36 years of public service. The Toronto skyline has changed dramatically since then. That Skydome is now buried under condos. That's a really good point, Kirk. Thank you for that. Appreciate you. Now, back on the road. This is like way back point 2. I told you that they would be all out of order. The quick 6 show topics here today. Jack Hughes had 3 goals. Jesper Bratt chipped in with 3 assists. And the visiting New Jersey Devils beat the Toronto Maple Leafs 5-2 for their 5th NHL win in a row. John Tavares had a goal and an assist for the Leafs, who slipped to 3-3-1. So that's 7 games played for the Leafs. And I'm going to go back to the same thing with the Flames thing. I don't feel like Leafs fans would ever listen to me. Flames fans might, because they at least know who I am. But in both cases, if you want to panic, go ahead and panic. It's too exhausting to, in October, deal with neurotic fan bases that just want to panic. Sidney Crosby and Anthony Mantha scored second period goals 77 seconds apart. Christopher Letang had 2 assists, and former Canucks netminder Artur Silovs made 23 saves as the Pittsburgh Penguins knocked off visiting Vancouver 5-1. And Jake Wallman scored a power play goal at 2:24 of overtime to give the visiting Edmonton Oilers a 3-2 win over the Ottawa Senators. And Brad Marchand had 2 assists in his emotional return to Boston. And Carter Verhaeghe scored the winner with 27 seconds left to help the Florida Panthers beat the Bruins in Boston 4-3. I wanted to talk about this, about all the games last night, because a couple of things. I was watching Pardon the Interruption on ESPN, as I do every day, and they talked about this being the sports equinox for not that long, a couple more weeks, where all 4 of the big leagues are playing at the same time. NFL, NHL, NBA, MLB. We're in the sports equinox. Maybe that's a good thing for you. Maybe it's not. I find it's a lot to keep track of, but it's great for shows like this. But at the end of Pardon the Interruption, because when we started this show, it kind of had a Howard Stern, Johnny Carson, Sports Center feel. It's obviously changed to way more of a PTI feel, especially when it was me and Darren every day for hours. And then he got a real job. And now he can only be with us sporadically, which, by the way, he'll be with us in hour 2. But right at the very end of their show yesterday, Kornheiser says, Mike, hey, Wilbon, what do you think about Brad Marchand's return to Boston tonight? And Wilbon goes, I don't care. And I'm like, how dare you? We'd been thinking about this for weeks here in South Florida as Panthers people, And clearly the NHL thought a whole hell of a lot about it too. So whatever. Mike Wilbon doesn't care. And that's fine, because when people ask me, what do you think about Inter Miami and MLS and golf and tennis, I don't care. So there's nothing wrong with Wilbon saying that. There's a slight problem with the fact that the game aired on ESPN. So there's that. But anyways, watching the game, there's so much of a life message. Sports is a mirror of life. It's a microcosm of life. It's a great teacher of life. And watching, they said on the ESPN broadcast, they're like, we're not going to break away. When they play the video tribute for Brad Marchand, we're going to stay with you. Which made me wonder when they did air the TV commercials. But anyways, I'm sitting there watching it. I'm getting choked up, and I don't give a rat's ass. But it's hard to go back. I did it in a lot as a damn radio guy. When I went back to PA with the Regina Pats, that was hard. Now I got jeered by the Raider crowd. That's another story. A little different than Brad Marchand. But very emotional. Wonderful job done by the Bruins. And I was talking with some Bruins fans. It was specifically Johnny O. Some of you met Johnny O from Johnny O's Gymnasium, where a year ago I was doing live shows from his gym here in South Florida. He's the biggest Boston sports fan I know. And he goes, Rod, us Bruins fans, we really miss Brad. I think they thought that they were going to bring him back after the Panthers rented him. And it's a deeper discussion that maybe we can get into after the break. Maybe get into it with Moose next hour. But when you think about it, why did you need to get rid of Brad Marchand? And why did Tampa Bay need to get rid of Steven Stamkos? And why? You know what I mean? Because when Marchand just signs a 6-year deal here in South Florida, why couldn't he sign a 6-year deal in Boston? Like they were saying on the broadcast last night that, I think it was Ferraro. He's like, the Bruins had to rebuild. At some point, they had to rebuild. At some point, they had to say goodbye to this guy. And that's why, frankly, I don't play GM at all. Somebody wrote in here yesterday and said, hey, Rod, who should the Blue Jays bring out of the lineup for Bo Bichette? I'm like, I don't know. I'm not the manager. And that's what makes me different than 98% or 99% of sports fans and definitely media out there who want to play Johnny GM. I don't know. It's not my job. I'm not wasting my brain power on that. I'm sure there's a reason why the Lightning had to get rid of Stamkos. And now that I think about it, damn it. Last week on my Cats and Bolts podcast, the Panthers Lightning show that we do down here, Florida's #1 most watched hockey show, not a big deal, had Dave Randorf on, the voice of the Lightning. I meant to ask him about the Stamkos thing. Must have been a God shot that I didn't. Because I still think it's a very sore subject up there on the Gulf Coast, the West Coast, as we call it in Florida, about the Stamkos thing. Something went down. Nobody really wants to talk about it. Nothing nefarious, but it's just something went down that nobody there wants to talk about. In the case of Marchand, I think they thought that they would be better off without him, and it has not worked. And it's not like he's shutting down his career anytime soon. 6-year deal he just signed with Florida. So why can't you keep a guy like that? There's a reason. I don't know what it is. I've never been a GM. And for that reason, I don't try and play one on TV, unlike everybody else that follows sports. Asking the viewers, what were you doing in 93? Laverne writes in, he's watching from Speedy Creek. He says, in 92 and 93, I remember watching the World Series with my wife-to-be. I shed a tear, almost embarrassed, but it was a very proud moment when Springer hit the home run the other night because what my wife was watching with me, and I shed another tear. I'm glad this generation can experience that as well. So cool. Laverne, that's a hell of a story. Please tell me your wife's name is Shirley. Let's keep that going, especially for Hour 1, the Canadian Hour, everybody. What were you doing in 1993? The last time the Blue Jays won the World Series. Hey, a lot of comments have come in. We will get to those after the break. Moose is coming up at Hour 2. That's the Nevada Hour, Silver State Sports and Entertainment Network, plus here across Canada and 32 U.S. states. 902-518-3033 is the Western Dodge text line. We'll be right back. We're live on the Game Plus television network. Of course, streaming live on YouTube, various podcast platforms, and 1700 Mission Radio.
Sports fans, daytime sports talk gets a whole lot better weekdays at noon Eastern with the Rod Pedersen Show. Talking sports daily with A-list guests, and the best part is, you can always join the discussion as we're the most interactive talk show on television. Broadcasting from coast to coast from the biggest events like Super Bowl, Stanley Cup Final, Grey Cup, and more, there's nothing like it in the game today. The Rod Pedersen Show, daily at noon Eastern and 10 p.m. Pacific on Game Plus Network.
Business owners and marketers. Okay, we know you think we're pretty cool. That's why we want you to share in the coolness factor. Partner with the Rod Pedersen Show and market your business every weekday to sports lovers just like yourself. Take advantage of our many cost-effective commercial and promotional opportunities. Tell the world about your business. Yes, the world. Thanks to Game Plus TV and the Rod Pedersen Digital Network. Contact us today and find out how you can be a part of Canada's fastest growing sports talk show, The Rod Pedersen Show.
Ultimate Fan Zone, taking our show on the road coast to coast. Shop online, ultimatefanzone.ca. Slick, user-friendly. We built this site for the die-hard sports fans. Jerseys, hats, team apparel, offering officially licensed fan gear from the best lines in sports. Nike, New Era, Adidas, Fanatics. Game day ready to your door. Now, just a click away, ultimatefanzone.ca, or check us out on Facebook and Instagram. UFZ Downtown Moose Jaw, home of everything authentic.
This is a test pattern. This is what happens when your video company screws up. You don't want your clients to see a screw up. Hire a company that only does video, so it won't screw up. Then, people who give you money will see less of these and more of you. Skycron.com/live.
Business owners and marketers. Okay, we know you think we're pretty cool. That's why we want you to share in the coolness factor. Partner with the Rod Pedersen Show and market your business every weekday to sports lovers just like yourself. Take advantage of our many cost-effective commercial and promotional opportunities. Tell the world about your business. Yes, the world. Thanks to Game Plus TV and the Rod Pedersen Digital Network. Contact us today and find out how you can be a part of Canada's fastest growing sports talk show, The Rod Pedersen Show.
You have a vision, a big idea, but how do you turn ambition into absolute impact? It starts with connection. Booking top-tier speakers and executing seamless events. That's the EMJ difference.
We position your brand where it belongs, through powerful advertising, strategic media, and promotion that drives results. At EMJ Marketing, we don't just promote, we partner. Your growth, our mission.
Hiring a video company shouldn't be complicated. Click, pay, done. Skycron.com/Regina.
Welcome back, everybody. The RP Show continues, brought to you in part in hour one by Suds Full Service Car Wash. Hi, Kirby. Congratulations to your son-in-law, Derek Moncrief, winning the Calgary Stampeders President's Ring Award. I'm following everything. And they have us on in Suds every morning in their lobby. So, hello, everybody, it's Suds. Fuel your fleet's finesse with Suds Regina's unbeatable cleaning packages. They'll shine like new every time. Visit sudsregina.com. Believe it or not, there's still things that I haven't got to yet that I want to. But I really appreciate the viewers checking in and helping me out when I'm hosting the show alone like this with topics and comments and so forth. So John Ohm, regarding Brad Marchand, he says, May he get into the Hall of Fame? Thoughts, Rod? That's a good conversation starter there, John Ohm. And it's obviously it's a slam dunk. To be honest with you, Moose has a really good comment. He's like, if you have to ask, then they shouldn't. You shouldn't have to ask if Brad Marchand gets into the Hockey Hall of Fame or not. 2 Stanley Cups with the Bruins and Panthers, Olympic gold, Four Nations Face-Off Championship. If that matters, I don't know. But of late, you don't even need to win to get into the Hockey Hall of Fame. Ask Pierre Turgeon, ask Henrik Lundqvist. So yeah, Brad Marchand is a living, breathing Hall of Famer. I just find it hard to believe that he's still just signed a 6-year contract, but players are playing later now than they ever did. Let me read a sports update here for the Ultimate Fan Zone and Moose Shop. Your home for jerseys, collectibles, and all the gear you need. Visit them today or shop online at ultimatefanzone.ca. The NFL will move the 2026 Pro Bowl games presented by Verizon to Super Bowl 60 week in the Bay Area. The All-Star event will continue to spotlight flag football and feature the league's best players in the AFC versus NFC flag game, which will preview the elite athleticism and competition of the sport ahead of its LA 28 Olympics debut. Freddie Freeman is always happy to return to Toronto, even if he doesn't expect a warm reception when the Dodgers face the Blue Jays in the World Series. The first baseman has Canadian roots. His dad's from Windsor, his late mother's from Peterborough. Freddie Freeman, a dual citizen, isn't expecting cheers when he steps onto the field Friday for Game 1. Nor should he get him. Come on. I know that he's basically Canadian. It doesn't even make me want to cheer for the Dodgers at all. That doesn't mean anything. Wasn't that the year the Vegas Golden Knights had all the Canadians on there, the most Canadians in the NHL? Nobody was cheering for Vegas because of that. Brad Marchand's Canadian. Nobody from Edmonton or Canada was cheering for the Panthers because he's Canadian, or the Canadians that were on their roster. Good story, yes. That's not going to turn the tide. Which, by the way, I have something written here. I'm seeing a lot of the crap on social media like we always are. Good friend of mine, the Hedgehog, Chad the Hedgehog, wrote in regarding Scruffy's hot take yesterday about George Springer and that he's a cheater. He shouldn't even be playing baseball. And this Chad the Hedgehog wrote into our Facebook page and said, I have no opinion on this, but the things people are saying has really eroded my faith in humanity. And I'm like, well, that's not new. I think a lot of us have felt that way for a long time. But frankly, there's two things about the 90s, the early 90s, and that Blue Jays run in 92, 93. There was no internet. There was no crap. It existed, but nobody really knew about it. It was an Army thing. Look it up. And when I think about my NBA fandom, which I haven't even got to the NBA yet, but I could watch it. Didn't have to go on social media and try and prove I was some guru because I didn't know anything about it. I could just watch it and enjoy it and not see people slinging crap at each other like monkeys in the zoo. That was a better time. I think we talked yesterday about us being number one in the 55-plus age demographic across Canada, soon to be Nevada, probably all of the U.S. in this time slot. It's because we get each other. I'm not even in the 55-plus age demo, but I might as well be. And there's a reason they called it the good old days, because they were better. That's your sports update, proudly presented by Ultimate Fan Zone Sports Store. Get your game day gear in-store or online at ultimatefanzone.ca. I've wanted to talk about all the things that I've talked about today, but there's more. This morning, one of the things I love the most is getting on the treadmill and running and turning on Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk. And it's always a treat when he's got Chris Sims on there because they work really well together. And I ran for 40 minutes, almost the whole time, talking about Aaron Rodgers. And the biggest game in Week 8, they feel, and they're probably right, is Green Bay at Pittsburgh. Not standing-wise per se, but it's Aaron Rodgers facing his former team. And I wanted the viewer's opinion on this, and I need to relate it a bit to the CFL, so it works better here in the Canadian hour. They went deep into Aaron Rodgers being miffed at the Packers organization, the team with which he won a Super Bowl, the team with which he was the MVP of the league twice, and how he was so upset and still upset that they drafted Jordan Love while Rodgers was still the number one quarterback. And I'm like, I don't get the mentality. So many people say that Aaron Rodgers is a narcissist. I don't know. I've never met the guy. One of the reasons I love Florio's show is he talks about, it's like this show. He talks about things, the number one, that you don't think about, but are there. You just don't think about them. And two, he talks about the things the leagues would prefer you didn't talk about. For instance, he's like, did you notice that Aaron Rodgers appearing on the Pat McAfee show just went away? It just magically went away, and all the trouble that it caused for Aaron Rodgers and for ESPN and for the New York Jets last year. And Sims brought up, Chris Sims, his dad's Phil Sims, about guys in New York that had radio shows and TV shows while they were playing for the Giants and the problems that it caused in the locker room way back in the 80s. It's not new, you know. But just back to that thing about Aaron Rodgers being miffed. I don't understand that, because here's the thing. It's why I get along with the athletes so well, because whether you're on the field as a quarterback or you're kicking a field goal or you're in the crease stopping the puck or you're sitting in front of a microphone and camera, you still have to perform. So what we're doing, you're on a stage, however you want to look at it, and there's a certain part of mental strength that needs to go with that, and obviously talent and a lot of great people helping you, but the mentality is the same. And I'm just thinking, why should you not be challenged? We all know you did the exact same thing to Brett Favre. You got drafted by the Packers. You ended up being his replacement. Why would you not think that you would be replaced one day? And I thought about my years, decades, as a matter of fact, at the old radio station that I worked, calling Rough Riders games, calling hockey games, doing morning sports, doing frickin' everything without any help at all. And anybody that was listening back then knows, with no help. I remember going into my boss's office and saying, hey, can I get a little help here? I spread out the newspaper. I'm like, the competing radio station's got 6 guys. 6. It's just me over here. And he's like, yeah, and you're still kicking their ass. Get out of our office. A year later, I come back, burnt out and broken. Can I get some help here? Well, what we could do is fire you and hire 2 guys and split your wage, or you can just keep doing the work. What would you prefer? So when they finally brought in some help, Phil the Thrill, everybody remembers the ageless Phil Andrews. Wasn't miffed. My God, I'd kiss his feet. He's happy to have some help. Why are you so threatened? But it's not just Aaron. I think of some other quarterbacks like Darren Dupont and Henry Burris, 2 very close, dear friends of mine, guys I still talk to. They never wanted to be challenged either. And they're both in the Hall of Fame, and Aaron Rodgers is going to be in the Hall of Fame. So it's a mentality, I guess. You know? That's why I've burned thousands of dollars and hours in therapy since. Because when my mom was diagnosed with cancer, and she didn't have long to live, and I'm in my boss's office asking for some time off to help deal with this. Anybody who's dealt with end-of-life stuff with your parents gets it. Banking stuff, right? Estate stuff, all the rest. They're like, we can give you a week, but we can't give you more than a week. I was still the voice of the Riders at the time, but not for long. Because I had a breakdown after that. We can give you a week, but no longer than that. The show would die without you. Turns out they were right. Rich in Edmonton writes in and he says, I didn't realize Aaron Rodgers isn't on McAfee anymore till RP mentioned it. That's the point. Neither did I. And that's why I love Florio so much. And that's why, Rich, you love this show so much, because I do the same thing. I bring up the things that are there that you don't even see, that the leagues would prefer that you don't talk about. Anyways, I could sit in here. There's a lot of great comments coming. We'll roll over into next hour, spend a little more time on. I just don't get the mentality. Why would Aaron Rodgers or anybody think that they're irreplaceable? Because nobody is irreplaceable. I still don't understand this. But again, that's going to be the big story Sunday night, Packers and Steelers and Aaron Rodgers. Rich in Edmonton says, you're bang on, RP. Dealing with the passing of a parent is no picnic. Yeah, and both my parents passed within 11 months. I understand nobody cares. What I also understand is we all had to deal with it with very little support from the workplace. Yeah. And my time there ended in the middle of that because I happened to have a breakdown that nobody gives a shit about. Topic for another day. Thanks for coming to another TED Talk. Moose is with us next hour. Thank you, Ken, if you're referring to what I was referring to. I'm not sure. Moose wants to join us for the Vegas hour. This should be good. NHL, NFL, NBA. I haven't even got to the NBA yet. I have a few things that I'd like to talk about with that. And a lot of World Series talk. We'll be right back after this here on Game Plus TV.
Hiring a video company shouldn't be complicated. Click, pay, done. Skycron.com/Regina.
You have a vision, a big idea, but how do you turn ambition into absolute impact? It starts with connection. Booking top-tier speakers and executing seamless events, that's the EMJ difference. We position your brand where it belongs, Guy, through powerful advertising, strategic media, and promotion that drives results. At EMJ Marketing, we don't just promote, we partner. Your growth, our mission.
This is a test pattern. This is what happens when your video company screws up. You don't want your clients to see a screw-up. Hire a company that only does video, so it won't screw up. Then, people who give you money will see less of these and more of you. Skycron.com/live.
You have a vision, a big idea, but how do you turn ambition into absolute impact? It starts with connection. Booking top-tier speakers and executing seamless events, that's the EMJ difference. We position your brand where it belongs, Guy, through powerful advertising, strategic media, and promotion that drives results. At EMJ Marketing, we don't just promote, we partner. Your growth, our mission.
Business owners and marketers. Okay, we know you think we're pretty cool. That's why we want you to share in the coolness factor. Partner with the Rod Pedersen Show and market your business every weekday to sports lovers just like yourself. Take advantage of our many cost-effective commercial and promotional opportunities. Tell the world about your business. Yes, the world. Thanks to Game Plus TV and the Rod Pedersen Digital Network. Contact us today and find out how you can be a part of Canada's fastest-growing sports talk show, The Rod Pedersen Show.
Sports fans, daytime sports talk gets a whole lot better weekdays at noon Eastern with the Rod Pedersen Show. Talking sports daily with A-list guests, and the best part is, you can always join the discussion as we're the most interactive talk show on television. Broadcasting from coast to coast from the biggest events like Super Bowl, Stanley Cup Final, Grey Cup, and more, there's nothing like it in the game today. The Rod Pedersen Show, daily at noon Eastern and 10 p.m. Pacific on Game Plus Network.
Hiring a video company shouldn't be complicated. Click, pay, done. Skycron.com/Regina.
How about that?
Yeah, welcome to the RP Show, everybody. Yakking it up on the old Yak Box, episode number 1601. of your favorite daytime sports talk show. We are on the Silver State Sports and Entertainment Network across Nevada, and of course on our overlords, Game Plus Television across Canada and 32 U.S. states. Get on up inside. Good to see you. Coming up next segment, Darren Moose Dupont will be with us. He is the founder of this particular award-winning television show and podcast and radio show. Moose will be with us next hour. He wants to be part of the Vegas Hour, and I don't blame him. Let's get down to business. Of the Quick Six show topics, the big story. For us, it's the World Series. If the Jays weren't in it, we wouldn't care. But they're in, and as expected, tickets for the World Series are a very hot item in Toronto. Tickets went on sale Tuesday morning and were sold out in an hour. I appreciate our viewers writing in and saying what the ticket prices are going for at Rogers Center. I haven't heard yet about Dodger Stadium, but 5 figures. Okay, so $10,000 and up. None of that surprises me. I can't wait for games 1 and 2, Friday, Saturday. As the week goes along and we get closer to game day, I'll be doing more diving into the series. Man, there's got a hell of a lot of other things to get to. You know, that's, as I was watching on, pardon the interruption, one of the ESPN shows, they said, we are in the sports equinox. The big four are all playing right now, so enjoy it for the 2 weeks that they all crisscross: NBA, NFL, NHL, MLB. It's a lot for a pea brain like me, but also great for sports talk. And I don't want to belabor it, but yesterday, Greg Zahn was on the program with us, World Series champion from L.A. He's not given the Blue Jays much of a chance in this series. He didn't go so far as to say how many games he thought it would go, but with the risk of people finding where he lives and burning down his house, he didn't want to. He just said the only way the Dodgers lose this is if they beat themselves. We'll see. We'll see. And what, for those that were watching here yesterday on Game Plus and the Silver State Sports and Entertainment Network, it just popped into my head late in the show. I didn't have any time to do any quality research on this. But for those of us that have a little bit of gray around the temples or silver in our hair, I was saying what was going on back in 1993 in your life, the last time the Blue Jays were in the World Series, because it's special for us. When was the last time the Dodgers were in the World Series? Oh, last year. Not for the Jays. It was 1993. So George H. Bush was the president to begin the year, and then there was an election across the U.S., and Bill Clinton became the president. That was what was going on there. Number one, I'm talking about in Washington. Number one at the box office was Mrs. Doubtfire. Who doesn't remember that lovable film starring Sally Field and Robin Williams? The only guy in the world that could turn us against Pierce Brosnan was Robin Williams. And he did. That was such a great show. I watch it today. Jurassic Park. That was the first year of the trilogy, or whatever that series was of Jurassic Park movies. That came up, but it never topped Mrs. Doubtfire. Number one song in the Billboard charts was I Will Always Love You by Whitney Houston. She stole it from Dolly Parton, but still. Boom, there it is. Came out in 1993 as well. Did not challenge Whitney Houston's song, but still an arena anthem none of us will forget, brought to you by the famed group Tag Team. For the CFL fans, the Sacramento Gold Miners became the first U.S. franchise in the CFL. For our Canadian viewers, an NBA expansion franchise was awarded to Toronto in 1993. They began play in 1995 called the Raptors. And it was the only year in history the Stanley Cup and World Series were awarded both to Canadian teams. How about that? Could it happen? Well, I guess it can't happen this year because the Florida Panthers own it. So it can't happen this year, maybe next year. Tony in Cochrane, Alberta, writes in. He says, 1993, I was 35 years old, had 3 boys that I was coaching sports, and just got my journeyman instrument mechanic ticket from SAIT. And I was bitching about the Browns and Belichick benching Bernie Kosar. Oh, by the way, great to see you back, Tony. And I just learned, all I'll say, because I was talking to a football guy yesterday, and things aren't as bad in Chapel Hill as the media is making it out to be at North Carolina, and that we can all expect Bill Belichick to be back and his staff for 2026. That's the word I got yesterday Who would believe that the media would blow things out of proportion? But they do. David number 1 is watching in Winnipeg and says, I was 6 years old in 1993 when they went back-to-back, the Blue Jays. Remember seeing the World Series Blue Jays cup in my bathroom after that I used when brushing my teeth. Hi, Kelly. National anthem singer to the stars. Kelly Bruce has checked in. Good to see you, Kel. Continuing on the quick 6 show topics here. Trying to stay on point if I can. NHL last night, Tuesday night, Jack Hughes had 3 goals, and the visiting New Jersey Devils beat the Leafs 5-2. Panic in Leafland. Hello, it's a day that ends in Y. Leafs 3-3-1. Sidney Crosby and Anthony Mantha scored second period goals 77 seconds apart, and the Pittsburgh Penguins knocked off Vancouver 5-1. Jake Wallman scored a power play goal at 2:24 of overtime to give the visiting Oilers a 3-2 win over the Senators. And the game that I was watching, the one that had my sports attention, was beaming out of TD Garden in Boston. Brad Marchand had 2 assists in his emotional return to Boston. And Carter Verhaeghe scored the winner with 27 seconds left to help the Panthers beat the Bruins 4-3. And I talked about this last hour, but for the benefit of those that weren't watching or couldn't, hopefully we get the full 2 hours on the Silver State Sports and Entertainment Network. That's what I'm getting from the viewers. They would like it. But I watched Pardon the Interruption for a lot of reasons. I enjoy the show. I like Wilbon and Kornheiser. Score one for old men in this perilous trade, longest running sports talk program on television. But anyways, right at the very end of their 30-minute show, Kornheiser says to Mike Wilbon, oh, and the Florida Panthers and Brad Marchand go into Boston tonight. Do you have any interest in that, Mike Wilbon? He's like, no, I don't care. I'm like, how can you say that? But what I'm realizing is now when every other show is talking in Canada, every other show is talking about the Blue Jays in America, every other show is talking about the NFL, college football, and the NBA. I get it. We're going to be here talking about hockey. And I meant to get to this last hour, and I'll be very quick on this, but Brad Marchand said after the game that he knew that he would get emotional, and he did. I mean, I got emotional, and I don't care. So what do you think he was thinking? And the fans, it was just a great place. 16 years he spent there in Boston, won a Stanley Cup, and then they deal him away at the trade deadline. And as my buddy Johnny O said, he is like Mr. Boston sports, man. Johnny O. He is like Mr. Fitness, Mr. Florida Fitness. Just ripped. He's like 65 years old. But he's like, Rod, the Bruins thought that he'd come back. The Bruins fans thought he'd sign back here. And I'm like, even though Johnny lives here in Florida, just down the street from me. But yeah. You sit there and you watch the game. The point of the whole thing that I'm trying to get at and land the plane is that Marchand had 2 assists in the game. So it's like you go back, you visit the future, the past, but you can't live there. What's in front of you is what's in front of you, and deal with what's in front of you. And for him, it was winning a hockey game. And Marchand had 2 assists, and the Panthers won 4-3, snapped a 4-game losing streak. Bob's your uncle. And the Panthers come home to face the Penguins on Thursday night and these Vegas Golden Knights on Saturday night. And I'll be there. Can't wait. But Johnny, he's got such a thick Boston accent. I sometimes can't even understand what the hell he's saying. But he was talking about Matthew Tkachuk the other day with me. And he was like, Johnny likes to swear like we all do. He's like, Rod, he's an effing Florida sports icon. Yes, he is. Matthew Tkachuk. By the way, the program is brought to you in part by Pump Jack's Steakhouse and Saloon, Pump Jack's Cathedral, Pump Jack's Weyburn. Come early and stay late at the place where friends meet. They bring you our picks, CFL and CFL picks every week. Pump Jack's. Glad to have them aboard. As we move along, I'll tell you the text line is open, 902-518-3033. Experience the Western Dodge difference, local, reliable, and driven to find the perfect vehicle for you. Yeah. The last hour, John wrote in and he said, is Brad Marchand getting in the Hall of Fame? And I said, well, that's no doubter. He's won 2 Stanley Cups with 2 different teams, Olympic gold, 4 Nations face-off, God knows what else. And Darren from Melfort writes in, he says, if Marchand gets in, Theron Fleury should be in the Hall of Fame too. Well, the only thing is, the obvious thing, if there's any scandal attached to Brad Marchand, which, there is a little bit. I mean, he was disciplined for licking an opponent, literally licking an opponent on the field of play. He was just fined this week $5,000 for ripping apart the helmet of Rasmus Dahlin in the penalty box. I don't know why some people can get away with things and some people can't. I don't think that used to keep me up at night. For instance, on the ESPN broadcast last night, the announcers were saying that I guess Marchand had said the old him would have taken Rasmus Dahlin's helmet of the Buffalo Sabres after the fight they were in on Saturday and thrown it into the crowd. But he's matured. So he just took the helmet into the penalty box and ripped all the padding out. And as, believe it or not, there are a lot of hockey fans here in South Florida. Some said, imagine if he'd been suspended for the return game to Boston because of his antics with Dahlin's helmet. I would think the NHL didn't suspend him for that reason because it was good pub and marketing his return to Boston. Or maybe he would have been suspended. But, I mean, it was just dumb. Is that enough to keep him out of the Hockey Hall of Fame? I don't know, but, I mean, I don't vote on these things. I don't know anymore. Corey writes in, my good guy Corey, here as it's 11 minutes after the hour. Expect the best instead of expecting the worst. See how that works out. Corey writes in on the Western Dodge text line regarding what were you doing back in 1993. Corey says, I was in grade 11. And when they won, I went out onto Albert Street. He's talking about the Toronto Blue Jays. Everybody celebrated across Canada. They rioted in 2 cities. When they win this World Series, nobody's going to riot, right? And I meant to go down this road last hour, didn't, but I will here. It was pre-internet back in 1993, certainly pre-social media, and we didn't have all the bunk and crap now. And there are a lot of people that are anti-Blue Jay in Canada, whatever. How about you cheer for who you want to cheer for? Cool. And stop shaming somebody. Just because you're from Canada doesn't mean you got to cheer for the Blue Jays. Just because you're from Las Vegas doesn't mean you got to cheer for the Raiders, which is funny because I was on the phone with Moose this morning and I said, we're starting to get some mail now from the Nevada and Las Vegas viewers. And they're like, on the Silver State Sports and Entertainment Network, and they're like, you don't need to talk about the Raiders for us. They suck. We know it. We don't even like them. You talk about the Golden Knights all you want, but you don't need to talk about the Raiders. I'm like, oh, okay. I was trying, but I don't really, for now, there's a lot of other teams to talk about. Darren Moose Dupont is coming in next for those that got here late. He's the founder of this program. He is a international broadcaster, now executive producer. And I feel like I've talked myself not into a corner per se, but I don't have time to get into my NHL top 5, bottom 5 teams here in week 3 of the regular season. But spoiler alert, I've got Vegas number 1. I have the Vegas Golden Knights as the number 1 team in the NHL. Prove me wrong. Rhonda writes in, hello, Rhonda. She says, hey, Rod, I was watching when Joe Carter touched them all in 1993. I jumped out of my chair and did the same thing with the Springer Dinger on Monday night. I couldn't believe it. It's going to be a tough one versus the Dodgers, but hey, the fat lady isn't anywhere, so go Jays. You don't hear that phrase anymore, Rhonda. It's not over till the fat lady sings. I don't think you can say that anymore. Yeah, producer Corey's saying in my ear, you can't say anything anymore. BC Eric writes in, he's in Vancouver, and he says, Brad Marchand, public enemy number 1 in this city. He should be. Beat you in the Stanley Cup final in 2011. Is that the only reason? It's a good enough reason, but I'm just saying, is that the reason? Because he beat your team? Yeah, as Tony Gabriel said to me about the 1976 Grey Cup, where he's still hated in Saskatchewan, my home and native land. He's like, I was just doing my job. Brent from Wellington, Florida writes in, he says, the Vegas Golden Knights are the real deal. I can rip through this real fast. I'll do it. We got time. Number 1 team in the NHL, Vegas. Number 2, the Winnipeg Jets. That's right. Number 3, the Colorado Avalanche. They just got lost to Utah last night. I can't have them higher than 3. Number 4, the Detroit Red Wings. And number 5, the New Jersey Devils. Those last 2 teams have both won 5 in a row. Bottom 5, Ottawa Senators, Buffalo Sabres, Boston Bruins. Second last team, the Calgary Flames. Don't hate me. And dead last, the San Jose Sharks. They're the only team that is yet to win. I did that fast. Well, break that down with Moose coming back after this. You're watching on the Game Plus Television Network, the Silver State Sports and Entertainment Network, of course, YouTube Live, podcast, and 1700 Mission Radio.
Hiring a video company shouldn't be complicated. Click, pay, done. Skycron.com/Regina.
Business owners and marketers. Okay, we know you think we're pretty cool. That's why we want you to share in the coolness factor. Partner with the Rod Pedersen Show and market your business every weekday to sports lovers just like yourself. Take advantage of our many cost-effective commercial and promotional opportunities. Tell the world about your business. Yes, the world. Thanks to Game Plus TV and the Rod Pedersen Digital Network. Contact us today and find out how you can be a part of Canada's fastest growing sports talk show, The Rod Pedersen Show.
Sports fans, daytime sports talk gets a whole lot better weekdays at noon Eastern with the Rod Pedersen Show. Talking sports daily with A-list guests, and the best part is you can always join the discussion as we're the most interactive talk show on television. Broadcasting from coast to coast from the biggest events like Super Bowl, Stanley Cup Final, Grey Cup, and more. There's nothing like it in the game today. The Rod Pedersen Show, daily at noon Eastern and 10 p.m. Pacific on Game Plus Network.
Business owners and marketers. Okay, we know you think we're pretty cool. That's why we want you to share in the coolness factor. Partner with the Rod Pedersen Show and market your business every weekday to sports lovers just like yourself. Take advantage of our many cost-effective commercial and promotional opportunities. Tell the world about your business. Yes, the world. Thanks to Game Plus TV and the Rod Pedersen Digital Network. Contact us today and find out how you can be a part of Canada's fastest growing sports talk show, The Rod Pedersen Show.
You have a vision, a big idea, but how do you turn ambition into absolute impact? It starts with connection. Booking top-tier speakers and executing seamless events, that's the EMJ difference. We position your brand where it belongs, Guy, through powerful advertising, strategic media, and promotion that drives results. At EMJ Marketing, we don't just promote, we partner. Your growth, our mission.
This is a test pattern. This is what happens when your video company screws up. You don't want your clients to see a screw up. Hire a company that only does video, so it won't screw up. Then, people who give you money will see less of these and more of you. Skycron.com/live. Hiring a video company shouldn't be complicated. Click, pay, done. Skycron.com/Regina.
Does your message stand out at Outlaw Communications? We make sure it does. Tony Plater brings 35 years of communication and leadership experience, from media training and leadership coaching to strategic crisis planning, and compelling content will help you lead with confidence. Outlaw Communications, where creativity isn't a hobby, it's a way of life. Darren Moose Dupont joins us from the T-Dot, Hogtown, the Big Smoke, Toronto, the home of the Blue Jays, and they will host Game 1 of the World Series Friday against the Los Angeles Dodgers. Moose, good to see you. Long time no talk. It's been like 90 minutes since we chatted on the phone. You said that city, you say, is on fire. Toronto. That's where Moose joins us from, everybody, in anticipation of the World Series. Give me the vibe.
Yeah, it really is. This city, I mean, you almost wouldn't even know that the NHL season has started because it's all baseball and it's all Blue Jays. No, they know the Leafs are playing for sure, but it is wild, and it is something, obviously, 32 years in the making. It's pretty cool.
Well, let me ask you this. You and I did not have big hopes for this Blue Jays season, and let's be honest.
Nobody did.
I'm letting us off the hook. They were last place in the AL East last year. Okay. You thought they'd be out by the end of May. I thought they'd be out of it by the middle of June. And to be honest, that's really when they caught fire. When did that city turn? When did you sense that city just they realized they had something there?
Yeah, it wasn't honestly till later in the summer. I mean, you and I talked about this throughout the season on this show. Like, how many times did we say they're just like cautiously optimistic? They're excited, but they are so used to getting hurt that they're just not going all in. And it was honestly maybe in August that people started saying, wow, this is for real. Like, we could win. And then even towards the end of the season, the Yankees got hot and they won all those games, and the Jays had to win every game down the stretch just to secure first place. It was even then, I think a lot of fans thought, yeah, the Yankees are the Yankees and they'll overtake us, and that's fine. We're still happy to be in the playoffs. But then, just every single day, this team and this fan base got more and more excited.
Well, it's funny, too, because you were alive when the Blue Jays won back-to-back World Series in 92, 93. I don't think you remember it real well. I certainly remember where I was, but I look at certain fan bases, like look at the Dodgers. Where were you when they last won the World Series? I don't know. It was a year ago. Yet you got the Mariners, who've never even been in the World Series, and we don't feel bad for them. But as far as this, we don't. As Jays fans, we don't. But as far as this series goes, Dodgers, Blue Jays, I think we're all kind of excited about the storylines, the Don Mattingly thing. He's never been to the World Series. The George Springer thing, which Scruffy went in that weird rant yesterday about him being a cheater with the Astros. I never even thought about it. Shohei spurning the Blue Jays. That's just on the top of my head. What are you hearing? What are you seeing? What are you thinking in advance of this World Series?
It's the big bad Dodgers against this happy-go-lucky Blue Jays team that everybody seems to be falling in love with by the minute, which is really cool. The Shohei thing will be fascinating. He spurned Toronto for LA. And I don't know if Toronto was really on his radar or not, but he didn't come here. And so Jays fans will remember that. Obviously, they won last year. The Springer thing's interesting. I think, if you look at somebody who's kind of overcome that, I don't think he wears the Astros cheating scandal anymore. I think he's been pretty remorseful. He's a guy who's easy to cheer for. Always seems to be, he always says yes to media interviews. He's always in a good mood, it feels like, and willing to talk. So he's a guy who's kind of, I think, shaken that, which is a great lesson in PR. So I think there's a lot of like this David versus Goliath going on. But I think, a lot of people are jumping on this bandwagon, not in Toronto, but, whether it's the country or across parts of the United States too.
This is Darren Moose Dupont joining us from Toronto, everybody. He's the founder of this show, Jason Sudeikis lookalike, and a jack of all trades in this perilous trade that we're in, an executive producer as well. Switching gears, because we got 2 weeks to talk about World Series. How do you feel about this time of year? I was saying this earlier, the sports equinox, as ESPN mentioned this year. The big four are all playing, NFL, MLB, NHL, NBA. You like it or not?
Yeah, I like it. I've always been down to saying this is probably, if I had to choose, the best time of the year. Every season's got its, positives and things that are great. But I'm starting to get a little overwhelmed, though, I'll be honest. College football is rolling on both sides of the border. Pro football on both sides of the border is getting really good. Hockey's going, baseball, basketball started, games last night too. So I love it. but I can see where it gets a little overwhelming trying to stay on top of everything.
The viewers weighing in. David, number 1 from Winnipeg, says, Moose, I would say it's Goliath versus Goliath when it comes to this series. John Ohm says, great to see and hear you, Mr. Toronto. Moose. There's only one real NFL note that I want to get to with you, and then we'll go to hockey, which I know you're very averse in. It's this Aaron Rodgers thing. You know how much I love Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk, NBC Sports Radio. Him and Sims are going off this morning about the game in Week 8 is the Sunday nighter, Packers at Steelers, and how Aaron Rodgers still has it in for Green Bay. Wanted out, miffed that they drafted Jordan Love. I think it's 6-7 years ago that they drafted, maybe 6 years ago. Long enough, Why? Where? Help me, Darren. Does he have the right to be angry? What did he have right to be mad that night? Which they brought up that they drafted him, and he demanded an explanation from the Green Bay franchise why they would take a quarterback in the first round. Where do you get off? I try to like Aaron Rodgers. It's hard.
I know. A reason I think you'll always kind of want to beat your former team and show that, they made a mistake going away from you or look into the future. I mean, you can't blame the Packers for looking at the future. And they picked a guy who's clearly become the future of this team. They know how to draft and groom and develop quarterbacks. That program just knows. They've done it. They don't cycle through quarterbacks. Very few teams are like that. But I think you look at for Aaron Rodgers, the time in New York, they were never competitive. He was hurt, and then they weren't competitive. So you weren't going to be able to stick it to your former team. But now he's playing well in Pittsburgh. And he thinks that this is an opportunity to go in there and beat his former team. Look at Brady. I don't remember Buccaneers versus Patriots kind of revenge game, but he wanted to go out and win a Super Bowl and show that it was him and that he can do it. It wasn't just Bill Belichick and the Patriot way. And I think for Aaron Rodgers, he wants to show that he can go in there and say, look, I'm not done yet. And so, hey, that personal motivation, that works.
Well, the thing about why you and I love Tom Brady so much, he would never say it publicly. He's probably thinking it. You would be human to think it, but don't say it. Brent from Wellington, Florida is the biggest Packers fan I know. He says, prima donna move, and he'll never be as loved as Favre. Go Pack. So, yeah, I just think it's so raw. He is such a drama queen, which the reason I was smiling as you said that, I can't even remember now. 6 other things have popped in my mind about what Florio said this morning. He's just so funny. And he brought up the fact that, Florio talks about things that we don't think about. It's why people love this show. I talk about the things that people don't see. And he goes, Aaron Rodgers isn't on McAfee anymore this year. How many of you noticed it? I didn't notice it. And the viewers were writing in here going, no, he's not. So somewhere along the line, somebody said, Aaron, you're not going on that show anymore. And maybe McAfee himself said, I don't want you on my show. To me, he made a total ass of himself when he was on there. But did you even notice that he's not on there anymore?
No. And you bring that up, and I had the same reaction. It's like, you know what? He hasn't been on that show. Not something I pay attention to that closely, but you're right. And maybe that's translated into him playing better football with the Steelers. I don't know. Maybe that's a bit of the personal PR move is, hey, just worry about football and don't worry about the media stuff. But, he'll never stay away from the limelight.
I'm telling you, this is why I love that show so much. And I said it last hour, but I didn't tell you this. Like, Chris Sims is on there with them, and they just talk about stuff that nobody else talks about. And they were saying how when Rodgers says things, it caused problems in the locker room of the Jets. And Chris Sims goes, yeah, with my dad, when my dad was quarterback in the New York Giants, certain guys on the Giants had radio shows. It's New York. And guys would say things that would cause problems in the locker room that would extenuate out onto the field. That actually happens, right? So somebody nipped it in the bud, whether it was Rodgers or McAfee or ESPN or whatever. The reason I was laughing, though, by the way, in my mind was they were talking about this clip from Woody Johnson, the owner of the New York Jets, at the owners' meetings where they said, hey, how do you feel about your team's 0-7 start? And he's like, well, if we had a quarterback that can complete a pass, maybe it wouldn't be so bad. And Florio goes, these days, he goes, I'm looking at that clip wondering if it's AI. Did he actually say that? And it's like, it's Woody Johnson. So, I mean, you talk about why some teams always lose. And like, did you see the clip? What do you think about that?
I know. First, the media, I think, swarmed his brother first when he came out of the hotel or something like that. I heard that. But yeah, I mean, how do you have an owner that is calling out your quarterback saying we're 0-7 because we can't complete a pass? And like, if you're Justin Fields, what are you doing? Like, you can't stay. You can't stay. If your owner doesn't think you're an answer at quarterback, how do you show up to work every day? Um, I know you're heated. I know you're a proud owner. You want to win, but you just can't say that publicly. You might as well just release him outright if you're going to say that publicly. It's a hostile work environment now for Justin Fields.
I go back to Florio. Like, he's such an asshole, and he says that he is, right? Like, that's what makes it even greater. But he's like, is this AI?
Yeah.
Who would say that? But yeah, Woody Johnson would. Everybody's, yes, Chief Johnny Moe writes in. He's like, Moose. Everybody's excited to see Moose.
How about that,
Okay.
though? The AI thing. Like, how many owners, coaches are going to say something and then come back and be like, you know,
It was AI.
It was AI. That's the new, oh, my phone was hacked, right? Or I didn't get your message. It was AI.
Oh, I know there's a lot of us that wish AI was around when we needed it back in the, well, it wasn't me. Okay. Since you're in the center of the universe of Toronto, before I get to my NHL top 5, bottom 5, you might have seen me say it before the break. And spoiler alert, I have the Vegas Golden Knights as the number 1 team in the NHL. Brent from Wellington, Florida was just there Saturday night when they tore up the Flames. I think it was 6-1. The Leafs, they got spanked last night by the Devils. Do I even want to know what the Leafs fans are saying with them being 500 here 7 games into this? 3-3-1.
Well, good news is they're not saying anything because they're following the Blue Jays. And honestly, that's a perfect storm for the Jays. You had Anthony Stolarz come out, a number of days ago and talk about this team and how they're not, playing tough enough and supporting him. And, he's taking shots and all the rest. And that kind of largely went unnoticed. I mean, yeah, it hit the headlines. It was on the sports talk shows. It was on Sports Center in Canada. But largely, it's Jays, and that gets buried a little bit. But then they play the Devils and lose, and there was no response after Anthony Stolarz' comments. There really wasn't any response by the team. So I think that's more concerning than the record. I think that's more concerning than Anthony Stolarz making the comments. I think the fact that they come back out and there's no response to those comments is a little concerning. But right now for the Leafs, it's so early in the season. They're 5 points out of first place in the league. So you're not out. It's too early to panic on any of that stuff. But a perfect storm with the Jays getting all the hype.
I saw people trying to make a mountain out of the molehill that was the Stolarz comments. But to paraphrase, he basically said they're soft. Is that what the news was from Stolarz?
Pretty much.
Yeah. Okay. And in other news, the sky is blue. Like,
yeah,
literally nothing to see here. So it's funny you bring up the NHL, and so like Brian in Winnipeg writes in, and with all due respect, this is on the Western Dodge text line 902-518-3033. He says most people in the U.S. don't switch their focus to hockey until after November. Whatever, bro. We're going to talk about it here because there are millions of hockey fans in the U.S., millions of them. And so we'll be the only ones talking hockey on regional or national television in the United States. Suits me fine. We'll do the talking here, okay? Leave the content to us. So before I get, you saw my top 5, bottom 5. I'll say it again. Vegas 1, Winnipeg 2, Colorado 3, Detroit 4, New Jersey 5. Ryan from upstate New York writes in and says, #Let's go Devils. Bottom 5, Ottawa, Buffalo, Boston, Calgary, San Jose. If you noticed, I don't have Chicago in my bottom 5. And Brent from Wellington, Florida, whom you know, writes in and says, have the Blackhawks graduated? They're 12th overall in the NHL. As much as people are freaking out in Calgary and Toronto and wherever else, I feel like on the other end of the spectrum, we can't get too giddy here about the Blackhawks being 3-2-1.
Yeah, I wonder about the Blackhawks at 3-2-1. I wonder about the Detroit Red Wings. But these are all teams that we expect to graduate at some point. Now, when I look at the Wings and I look at the Blackhawks, they're graduating to different grades or different levels, right? The Blackhawks are graduating out of the basement, out of, still in the rebuild, but not at the contender phase. whereas Detroit is trying to graduate out of the contender building phase and into that playoff / Stanley Cup phase. I think there's a bit of a difference. So they are in different places when it comes to, where they're graduating from. But it's exciting. And for Chicago, they're playing a little bit of a different brand of hockey. Like they're competing at a different level. They're playing like a team that, believes and thinks they should be winning games. And now they're winning some games. So that's always, a good thing. I like that you got the Jets number 2. Jonathan Taves getting his first with the Jets. They're 3-0 on the road, which I think is really big for Winnipeg. They're for real. Carolina lost their last game, but that's the only other team that I'd put into the top 5 because really
at Vegas. At Vegas, 4-1 the other night in what I thought was a Stanley Cup final preview. I gotta think that I asked you somewhere along the line who was your Stanley Cup final prediction, and you said Colorado. Did you say Vegas, Carolina?
It was Vegas, Carolina, I'm pretty sure, because I've always gone Colorado, Carolina for the last 2 or 3 seasons.
Yeah. By the way, I gotta give this shout out to Laverne, who was texted in from the Frontier City, and he goes, all the teams. Remember, we had this thing going into the NFL season. Who was going to be the surprise teams? We pulled all of our NFL people and our people, and you had the Raiders. I had the Raiders. Everybody had the John Ryan, Super Bowl champion punter of the Seahawks, had the Raiders. Okay, so yeah, we're idiots, but then so is he. He won a Super Bowl, and he said the Raiders were going to be the surprise. You know who's the team? Arash Madani, the national reporter, Blue Jays fame, said the Patriots at 5-2. But before we go blowing his skirt up, he also said the Jets, who are 0-7. So let's just pump the brakes on the Arash thing before we crown his ass. Tori Gurley and Jim Barker both said the LA Chargers, but they were in the playoffs last year. I don't feel like that's a surprise, that they would be a surprise team. Zig Fracassi said New England, and Mo Egger, whom you met at Super Bowl in LA, he also said New England from ESPN Cincinnati. So we have less than 2 minutes. What's up for your weekend? People said we need to give a shout out to the Rams. Are you doing Canada West football this weekend? What's up?
I am. I'll be in Regina for the Rams game, and it's the Colts for me that's the biggest surprise in the NFL so far this year. But I got the Rams this weekend, which will be really fun. It's going to be a fun weekend. I'm going to Saskatchewan, going to call Canada West football on a rare Friday afternoon game. It's like a 1:00 local time kickoff in Saskatchewan. I'll be back to the GTA for a basketball doubleheader Saturday and OHL hockey Kitchener Rangers on Sunday. So it's going to be a busy 3 or 4 days.
How about this guy, Johnny Toronto? I was going to say you're getting out of Ontario for the weekend, but you're not. You're getting out for like a day or two.
An overnight trip. That's about it.
Yeah. Well, and by the way, Colin in Ottawa writes in. He says, always good to see the Dupester back on the RP show. Has anybody ever called you the Dupester? I don't feel like
that's a first.
I've never heard that.
Dupes,
I've been around you a lot.
But not the Dupester.
Well, I like the Moose.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, sure. We can all say the Colts are the surprise team. Now, this was going into the year. Who did we think? And there wasn't one person that said the Indianapolis Colts. So, again, that's what's fun. And then you got guys like Laverne keeping track of what we say. You hope nobody keeps track. Okay, Moose, great job. Good to see you. Let's do it again soon.
You bet. Thank you.
We got a sports update and viewer takeover on the way, everybody. You're watching the RP show across the Silver State Sports and Entertainment Network. And, of course, the big one, Game Plus Television.
You have a vision, a big idea. But how do you turn ambition into absolute impact? It starts with connection. Booking top-tier speakers and executing seamless events. That's the EMJ difference. We position your brand where it belongs, Guy, through powerful advertising, strategic media, and promotion that drives results. At EMJ Marketing, we don't just promote, we partner. Your growth, our mission.
This is a test pattern. This is what happens when your video company screws up. You don't want your clients to see a screw up. Hire a company that only does video, so it won't screw up. Then, people who give you money will see less of these and more of you. Skycron.com/live.
Business owners and marketers. Okay, we know you think we're pretty cool. That's why we want you to share in the coolness factor. Partner with the Rod Pedersen Show and market your business every weekday to sports lovers just like yourself. Take advantage of our many cost-effective commercial and promotional opportunities. Tell the world about your business. Yes, the world. Thanks to Game Plus TV and the Rod Pedersen Digital Network. Contact us today and find out how you can be a part of Canada's fastest growing sports talk show, The Rod Pedersen Show.
Sports fans, daytime sports talk gets a whole lot better weekdays at noon Eastern with the Rod Pedersen Show. Talking sports daily with A-list guests, and the best part is, you can always join the discussion as we're the most interactive talk show on television. Broadcasting from coast to coast from the biggest events like Super Bowl, Stanley Cup Final, Grey Cup, and more, there's nothing like it in the game today. The Rod Pedersen Show, daily at noon Eastern and 10 p.m. Pacific on Game Plus Network.
This is a test pattern. This is what happens when your video company screws up. You don't want your clients to see a screw up. Hire a company that only does video, so it won't screw up. Then, people who give you money will see less of these and more of you. Skycron.com/live.
Business owners and marketers. Okay, we know you think we're pretty cool. That's why we want you to share in the coolness factor. Partner with the Rod Pedersen Show and market your business every weekday to sports lovers just like yourself. Take advantage of our many cost-effective commercial and promotional opportunities. Tell the world about your business. Yes, the world. Thanks to Game Plus TV and the Rod Pedersen Digital Network. Contact us today and find out how you can be a part of Canada's fastest growing sports talk show, The Rod Pedersen Show.
Hiring a video company shouldn't be complicated. Click, pay, done. Skycron.com/Regina.
All right, welcome back, everybody. As we tell you every day, the RP Show is brought to you in part by CoolBet. Claim your welcome bet bonus up to $200 with the promo code RP200 at coolbet.com. You get a bet anyways, so why not do it with CoolBet? They'll match your opening deposit up to $200, Canadian viewers only. Sorry. You know, I haven't even got to the NBA yet, and still won't. Hang on, let's do a sports update here for Ultimate Fan Zone in Moose Jaw, your home for jerseys, collectibles, and all the gear you need. Visit them today or shop online at ultimatefanzone.ca. I was just thinking, because Wayne writes in from Victoria, and he says, it looks like Moose is getting lots of air miles traveling across Canada. He is. And I was thinking of Billy Ravnik, who owns and operates Ultimate Fan Zone. He's been going to the ALCS in Toronto, probably going back for the World Series. I don't know why I'm so hung up on this. Where were you back in 1993? And maybe it's because I was just a young pea-picking hayseed on the farm. I hadn't been anywhere in 1993. But nobody that I knew had been anywhere either in my small little world. Nobody went to the World Series games. And now I got tons of friends that are going. It's wild. It's all on the social media. It looks like they're having so much fun. It just, I don't know, we travel more. It was not a thing back then, as I recall. Speaking of, Blake Snell will start Friday's Game 1 of the World Series for the Dodgers. Yoshinobu Yamamoto will pitch in Game 2, according to skipper Dave Roberts. The pitching order repeats the strategy used in the NLCS, which the Dodgers used to sweep the Brewers in 4. The LA Chargers will host the Minnesota Vikings when Week 8 in the NFL kicks off Thursday night. The Vikes are 3-3, coming off a home loss to the Eagles. Chargers 4-3, coming off a home loss to the visiting Indianapolis Colts. The Southeastern Conference features all 3 of the top 25 matchups this weekend in Week 9 of college football. Number 3, Texas A&M faces number 20, LSU. Number 8, Mississippi visits number 13, Oklahoma. And number 10, Vanderbilt hosts number 15, Missouri. In other top games, Minnesota plays Iowa, and Indiana faces UCLA in the Big Ten. Number 11, BYU visits Iowa State in the Big 12. SMU goes to Wake Forest in the ACC. And number 18, South Florida, heads to Memphis in the American Conference. Again, the sports update is proudly presented by Ultimate Fan Zone Sports Store. Get your game day gear in store. But more than anything, check them out online at ultimatefanzone.ca. I asked Billy when I was with him this summer, I said, what's your split on sales versus in-store and mail-outs? He's like, about 50-50. They send a ton. From the audience, talking about teams that are panicking or getting a little fat, as they say, because they're doing well in the NHL. Rich in Edmonton writes in, he says, no panic in oil country. The previous 2 Octobers were terrible as well. Scruffy pointed that out the other day. The Oilers are actually off to a better start this year than last, and definitely better than the year before when they ended up firing their coach. So, that's a mature fan base in Edmonton. That's a mature fan base. Trust me, you see it. Certainly across the NHL, but it's like, if you've won, you know, even going back to the 80s and 1990 when the Oilers won 5 Stanley Cups, you don't lose that. Here in Florida, it's fun to watch. The Lightning had won 3 Stanley Cups, and that's a mature fan base in Tampa Bay. In Florida, they're growing up. They were a very immature fan base when I got here 5 seasons ago, but now they've been to 3 straight finals, 2 Stanley Cup wins. Panthers fan base is growing up, and it's very nice to see. I'm not going to say anything about the franchises that haven't won Stanley Cups. And I'm not going to say that they're immature, but what I will say is they should probably seek professional help because they don't know how to handle bad starts. Producer Corey has just screamed in my ear, Toronto. And here's the thing about that. Yeah, they've won cups, but not in the color television era. So you might as well lump them in with the Sharks, the Jets, the Canucks, all the teams that have never won Stanley Cups. They don't know how to act. Don't come at me. And you got this Vegas franchise that they're immature fan base as well. That is not how about inexperienced? They don't know what it's like to lose, right? That's different. What'd you say, 15 or a minute? We'll be right back. Silver State Sports Entertainment Network and Game Plus.
This is a test pattern. This is what happens when your video company screws up. You don't want your clients to see a screw up. Hire a company that only does video, so it won't screw up. Then, people who give you money will see less of these and more of you. Skycron.com/live.
Business owners and marketers. Okay, we know you think we're pretty cool. That's why we want you to share in the coolness factor. Partner with the Rod Pedersen Show and market your business every weekday to sports lovers just like yourself. Take advantage of our many cost-effective commercial and promotional opportunities. Tell the world about your business. Yes, the world. Thanks to Game Plus TV and the Rod Pedersen Digital Network. Contact us today and find out how you can be a part of Canada's fastest-growing sports talk show, The Rod Pedersen Show.
Sports fans, daytime sports talk gets a whole lot better weekdays at noon Eastern with the Rod Pedersen Show. Talking sports daily with A-list guests, and the best part is you can always join the discussion as we're the most interactive talk show on television. Broadcasting from coast to coast from the biggest events like Super Bowl, Stanley Cup Final, Grey Cup, and more. There's nothing like it in the game today. The Rod Pedersen Show, daily at noon Eastern and 10 p.m. Pacific on Game Plus Network.
Business owners and marketers. Okay, we know you think we're pretty cool. That's why we want you to share in the coolness factor. Partner with the Rod Pedersen Show and market your business every weekday to sports lovers just like yourself. Take advantage of our many cost-effective commercial and promotional opportunities. Tell the world about your business. Yes, the world. Thanks to Game Plus TV and the Rod Pedersen Digital Network. Contact us today and find out how you can be a part of Canada's fastest growing sports talk show, The Rod Pedersen Show.
You have a vision, a big idea. But how do you turn ambition into absolute impact? It starts with connection. Booking top-tier speakers and executing seamless events. That's the EMJ difference.
We position your brand where it belongs guy through powerful advertising, strategic media, and promotion that drives results. At EMJ Marketing, we don't just promote your rebel, we partner. Your growth, our mission.
Do you worry about how much someone drinks?
Do you feel angry or depressed most of the time? Do you feel neglected or unloved?
Do you feel that if the drinker loved you, she or he would stop drinking?
If you answered yes to any of these questions, you are not alone.
Not everyone trapped by alcohol is an alcoholic.
Families and friends are suffering too.
Al-Anon
and
and
Alateen can help. Call 1-866-200-0223 or visit alanon.org/help.
Looking for a new ride without the big city pressure? Come to Western Dodge in Moose Jaw, where you'll find an unbeatable lineup of Ram trucks, Jeep SUVs, Dodge Muscle, and Chrysler family rides. With knowledgeable staff, great prices, and that friendly Moose Jaw touch, you'll drive away with confidence. Western Dodge, big selection, small town service. Visit us today or browse online at westerndodge.ca. All right, welcome back for Overtime, everybody. Proudly brought to you by our friends at Overtime Hockey Lanes in Calgary. Wellness check, Calgary. How you doing? Flames have lost 6 in a row. Are you looking for the perfect place to perfect your shot? Maybe the Flames should go to Overtime Hockey Lanes. With state-of-the-art shooting lanes, top-notch equipment, it's the ultimate training destination for players of all ages and skill levels. Whether you're prepping for the big game or just want to have some fun, Overtime Hockey Lanes has got you covered. OvertimeHL.ca. I'm tell you what, I've had such a bang today on the program. Thank you to the viewers for helping me out with that. The comments are just always so zany, And I guess there's a world out there outside sports. I've never quite understood or even wanted to be part of that world. I've never been part of it. I don't want to be part of it. But I get a bang out of this Wayne, who's watching in Victoria. He goes, wow, I just realized that the Leafs haven't won a cup in 58 years. It's funny that just dawned on him. Meanwhile, in Toronto, they think about it every day. Since 1967, they've thought about it every single day. And Wayne has a life outside of it. You know what I mean? And then on the flip side, there's been a big Canadian flavor to the program today. We do hour 1, all Canadian sports. Hour 2, we try to limit it, but the Blue Jays are in the World Series. And it's funny seeing these young kids now, like I did a Twitter search in the break at my own peril, and I saw this kid, Matt Young. He's a young television broadcaster in Saskatchewan, and he's all horny about the fact that there's video of the Blue Jays playing a preseason game in 1991 at Taylor Field. I'm like, yeah, I was there. The Blue Jays were a big deal. I believe it was 91. It was a long time ago. It doesn't have the year here, but Cito Gaston, Devon White, all those guys, they played the National Baseball Institute, NBI, in Taylor Field, the football field, home of the Rough Riders. That was a thing. So we all remember it. I've thought about it a lot of times since, but for these young kids, even Moose's age and so forth, they don't remember this stuff. So it's dredging up a lot of really good memories. And it's funny because Brent in Wellington, Florida writes in, he says, how about a moment of silence for Mariner fans so close to their first World Series bid? Ouch. Well, I don't feel sorry for them because we've been there with our teams, but I get it. And if the Dodgers mop the floor with the Blue Jays, which is what everybody's predicting, I hope that doesn't happen. But Shohei could beat him on his own. That'll make the Mariners fans feel better in that, we never would have beat the Dodgers anyways. But I look at it as a Blue Jays nation, whatever we call ourselves. I only cheer for them or follow when they're winning. But, we didn't expect them to get this far. You come this far, you might as well win it, But we had 20 years of crap. What, about 95 to 2015? 20 years of crap. And this is a guy you're watching right now that did sports casting in Canada for almost 40 years. Like, I know where the fan base is. Trust me, I know, especially Western Canada. Most people are into the Blue Jays when they're winning, and that's where we're at. But back in the early 90s, man, that's my point. They were going coast to coast across the country, doing the caravan. They haven't done that in a long time, but they haven't really had to because they've been winning. But for that 20-year stretch, people pretty much checked out. Bill writes in, he says, some of us remember the last Leaf Parade. Well, I can't imagine how you feel, because I'm sitting here feeling very old, reminiscing on the Blue Jays in the 93 and 92 World Series championships. But 1967? I wasn't alive then. It's almost like they didn't win at all. They didn't win in my lifetime. John Ohm says, the RP show rocks, and don't you forget that. Thank you, John. I don't plan to forget that. And it's funny, the gentleman in Winnipeg, great guy, he's watching the show, Brian. He goes, Americans don't pay attention to the NHL until late November. Well, that's fine, but we're going to. They pay attention to enough of their own stuff. I'm looking at the NBA tonight. 3, 6, 9, 12 games in the NBA tonight. We haven't even talked about it today. There's enough shows talking about that. Shoot. ESPN has their shows dedicated to it all day, which I'll go back to, pardon the interruption, with Kornheiser saying to Wilbon, are you excited about Brad Marchand returning to Boston with the Florida Panthers? No. I was like, literally, I can't believe he said that. But at least he's honest. Colin in Ottawa writes in, he says, you can't really play exhibition games around the country anymore because the MLB Players Union doesn't want their members to play in non-major league facilities. Kind of going back to what I was saying earlier in the week with don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened. As I said in hour one, the older people that watch this show get it. We refer to them to the good old days because they were better. There are certain sports that they don't pay attention to player safety. I got into auto racing during COVID, and I'm like, where's this been all my life? Oh, my God. The smell of fuel, spaghetti straps. What the hell? Tires are flying off vehicles into the crowd. I'm like, what? But then COVID released the reins a little bit, and we got back to normal. But auto racing was fun. You want danger? And where they don't care about player safety, go watch an auto race sometime. Get into NASCAR. But hockey and football, and as you've pointed out, baseball, they just changed from what it used to be. All for the sake of the players. We can't have them hurting themselves. Oh, my God. Tomorrow, Les Lazaruk's going to co-host with me. I don't think we have an hour 2 guest lined up yet, but that's okay because whoever it is, I know will be great. Have a great 24 hours, everybody, and we'll see you tomorrow here across the Game Plus television network, all across Canada, 32 U.S. states, and, of course, YouTube Live podcast, Mission Radio, and across Nevada here on the Silver State Sports and Entertainment Network.
That